Hey folks, this is your next installment in a series of lichen identification videos on lichen morphogroups. This week we will cover the leaves. Okay, so some general characteristics of the leaves morphogroup. These are chlorolichens with white medulla. Within this group, you could subdivide it into two phylogenetic groups, the physioids, which contain genera such as Physia and Fisconia. We're not going to learn about these in the Fungal Kingdom 2020, although you may encounter these in the field. So look for these species. These will be ones with narrow elongate lobes that are dull or distinctly frosted towards the tips. And we call this frosting pruinose or pruina. And you can see that on this sample of Fisconia americana on the right. Most of the ones we're going to be speaking about and learning about this quarter belong to the parmelioids. And these have narrow to broad lobes that are generally shiny towards the tips. So let's take a look at some of the species on your site ID list. First is Platus Masha Glauca. I like to say that with an Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator accent. Platus Masha Glauca. It's a fun one to say, and it's one that you're going to commonly encounter in the Pacific Northwest, in lowland coniferous forests. Here you can see it dry, and you can see the lobes are variously shaped, and it kind of has a minty green, whitish color on top. When it's wet, it can be even more white. And it sometimes can even look a lot more frilly like this sample on the right. And that's because of the varying degree that this species has isidia and ceridia, or just ceridia. So here's one that's very acidiate. Here's one that has some acidia along the margins. And then here's one, and if you look up close, you can see ceridia as well on these samples. And one of the other things that you'll notice about that is that the lower surface of the lichen has a modeling of at least two of these three colors, black, brown, and or white. So look for black, brown, or white on the bottom, the green top. It's an epiphyte in most abundant in moist coniferous forests. That's Platus Masha Glauca. Okay, another species in the same genus, Platus Masha harrii. This one has elongate narrow lobes with marginal acidia. So whereas Platus Masha Glauca can have acidia on the lamina or the margins, this is really marginal. And here they are, these finger-like projections, shiny, asexual reproductive structures on the margins of these narrow lobes. And you can see it in this kind of greenish color. You could also see it looking more like a white or bone color with the black background. And again, the back can be a combination of black, white, and brown as well. Okay, next up we have Parmelia Solcata, and this is another one that's very common on in our lowland coniferous forests. I often see it growing on hardwood trunks and branches. It has squarose rhizines, so they act like nature's Velcro. And you can see these as part of bird nests because of that. And you can see it has one main rhizine with these square or, branches coming out at kind of a perpendicular angle to the main branch, squarose rhizines. This species lacks acidia, but develops ceridia along these angular cracks in the surface, or cracks and ridges along the surface. And they can also develop on the margins. So laminally or marginally, you can see ceridia developing. And the upper surface has these pale angular markings on it, which you see here. That's Parmelia Solcata. Next up, we have Menigazia Subsimilis. This is also common on hardwoods and alder, especially west of the Cascades and along the coast. The way that I recognize this one is it's kind of a tightly oppressed rosette that I see growing on the side of a tree, and it has tiny little roundish perforations. So at first glance, you might think it might be Parmelia, but when you get up close, it actually has these rounded holes in the thallus. So look for these roundish perforations. The lobes are narrow and hollow, and the soridea are present on short, erect lobes. So here you can see kind of these roundish soridea here. You can see them developing along the edges here and here. So look for the soridea and the perforations, that's Menigazia Subsimilis. Next up, we have some of the Hypogymnia species. First, we have Hypogymnia inactiva. This is a medium-sized hypogymnia with erect forking lobes. So here you can see its erect growth pattern. Here's a little bit more flat, but you can see the forking lobes here. And I think you might recall me mentioning in one of my videos that one of the ways that you can differentiate between different species of hypogymnia is to open up the hollow lobe and look at the interior. And so this is the top and the bottom. The ceiling and the floor of the interior lobe is dark on both sides for this species. This occurs on conifers and hardwoods. You can often find perforations in the tips of the lobe. So here's a very up close view of the underside of one of these lobes with these perforations in it. And this tends to be a more shade tolerant species compared to the other species of hypogymnia. That's Hypogymnia inactiva. Next, we have kind of a species complex. So I'm going to allow you to consider these similar enough that we're going to just group them together. That's Hypogymnia apennata and Hypogymnia enteromorpha. Okay, so what are some characteristics of this hypogymnia? This one has, I always think of it as kind of having a really nice soft papery texture and being quite puffy. The thallus is whitish gray to pale gray on top. The lobes again are puffy, hollow, and trailing or oppressed. So here you can kind of see the trailing growth form. Sometimes it can be even flatter. The lobe interiors are dark. The tips are often swollen with a terminal hole. And this picture nicely shows this tiny terminal hole right in the tip. See that? And you can see it here. Here's some apothecia. So apothecia are quite common here. There's frequent or sparse, short perpendicular bud-like side lobes. So see all these little bud-like side lobes coming off here? Boop, boop, boop. Look at these ones. Boop, boop, boop. All these little side lobes. And you'll find this on wood and bark, mainly of conifers. Again, that's Hypogymnia apennata, Hypogymnia enteromorpha. Okay, then we have Hypogymnia physotes. This is one we'll be working with in lab this week. We'll have soridea lining the bursting lobe tips. So soridea on the lobe tips here, as you can see here, along the tips. The lobes are oppressed or with ascending tips. And the lobe interiors have dark floors but white ceilings. Again, that's Hypogymnia physotes. Okay, that's it for the leaves.